Hello, analyzers. Welcome to our live stream. Hello there. Hi there. So hit the thumbs up. Let me know you're there. Put your question or your comment in the chat box. So this live, we're going to talk about the prosecution's reply to Elizabeth Holmes' request to basically stay at home. She wants the court to grant her motion for release pending appeal. That means she stays at home until the appeal decision is made. Appeals could take up to a couple years. So I put a poll there. Go ahead and vote in our poll. Do you think the judge is going to grant it or deny it? And guess what? I can't believe this. Elizabeth Holmes bought and booked a one-way ticket to Mexico 21 days after the jury convicted her of a conspiracy and 3 counts of wire fraud. 21 days. She's booking a trip to Mexico, a one-way trip with no return ticket. I can't believe it. The audacity. Did she not think she was going to be found out? Not only did she book a ticket to Mexico, she also apparently is received $450,000 in loans. We're going to talk about that too. And we're going to talk about the prosecution says she's a flight risk. And this is the greatest opportunity for her to flee, given that she's facing and she's to surrender. She's been ordered to surrender April 27th to prison to start serving that 11-year and 3-month prison sentence. She has the means and the motive to flee. That's why she's a flight risk. So we're going to talk about what is the defense going to say in response to buying this ticket? She actually booked a ticket 21 days. Unbelievable. What does that tell you guys? What does that tell you? Yeah, she needs to be in jail now. Thanks for joining me, Tilo. Hugo, hi there. Looking for special treatment as usual. Yeah, it's amazing to me. It's just amazing to me that she's been convicted. She's awaiting sentencing. Now, she knew it. Well, I think she may have known at that point they had pushed off the sentencing until November. But she knew she was facing substantial prison. And what? She didn't think she'd be found out? She didn't think that the government would find out that she was trying to leave the country? They have her passport. So we're going to talk about what the defense said when the prosecution contacted the defense attorneys back in January. On January 23rd, 2022, she was convicted on January 3rd of 2022. January 23, she's booking the one-way ticket to Mexico. The prosecution finds out. They contact the defense attorneys. And what did the defense attorneys say? Are you ready for this? Here's their response. This is reported. And again, this video is simply my opinion. It's for education information. Please do subscribe to the channel to join our lively chat. Let me know how the Niners are doing. Let's see. I say she's just into Mexican cooking. Well, actually, she probably had some deal going on in Mexico. However, I don't think that was her ultimate destination. I don't. And I'll tell you why. Okay. Did you see the response from the defense? Yeah. I did. Thank you, Hugo. I'll actually read it to you. So the prosecution reached out to the defense attorneys and said, hey, we found out that there's unauthorized flight booked by Elizabeth Holmes. What's going on? Defense attorneys respond, and I quote, given the verdict, she does not plan to take the trip and therefore did not provide notice, seek permission, or request access to her passport, which the government has for the trip. That's what the defense attorney said. So wait a minute. Apparently she had booked it before the jury's verdict to attend a wedding in Mexico. Interesting. So I guess maybe she thought she wasn't going to be convicted. I mean, what reality is she living in? And I'm sure the defense attorneys prepared her. You know, if you're convicted, I have shown you guys all the federal sentencing guidelines, depending on the amount of loss that she defrauded the investors. That's what put her in the 135 months to 168 months. The judge gave her the 135 months, right? So did she just figure that? I think she thinks, and I wonder if the people around her too. I really wonder about this. Or maybe she just doesn't listen to anybody. Maybe she just thinks it doesn't apply to her. I mean, obviously, she believed her technology worked. She sold it to a bunch of investors, told them it worked. They invested hundreds of millions of dollars. When in the trial, the evidence showed that it didn't work. It wasn't accurate and reliable blood testing. So maybe she just lives in a different reality. I don't know. What do you guys think? Okay, so maybe she booked it before the wedding. I guess we're going to find that out. And by the way, the hearing on this motion, on Elizabeth Holmes' motion to basically stay at home, which is called a motion for release pending appeal, that is set for March 17th, and her surrender date is April 27th. So at that hearing on March 17th, maybe the judge will ask questions about buying this one-way ticket. But maybe what the defense is going to say is, hey, the government didn't even bring this up. They didn't object to her staying at home from the period of time between the sentencing, which was in November, and the surrender date in April. Apparently, the government did not object, claiming she was a flight risk then. Maybe that's what the defense is going to argue. So why are they now arguing it? But that's not the standard. The standard, the tests, and if you take a look at the two videos I've done, one is the 10 reasons, Holmes 10 reasons to stay at home video. And also the other video I did, I think it's Balwani Sentencing and Elizabeth Holmes Stay Home. Those two videos, I do more extensive analysis. So the test, let me tell you what the test is. Number one, that she's not a flight risk and not a danger to the community. And the defense has to show by what's called clear and convincing evidence that she's not a flight risk and she's not a danger to the community. The defense has to meet that burden. The prosecution is arguing they haven't met that burden. They can't meet that burden. She's got a one-way ticket to Mexico. She apparently has a lot of resources or resourcefulness. I mean, this money, this $450,000 in loans, which, by the way, was used to pay the SEC settlement, the SEC claim or lawsuit that she was dealing with. Somehow she got loans from people to settle that SEC claim. Very interesting. Okay, so let me talk to you about flight risk. So can the defense argue they didn't bring it up? Well, they can argue that all they want, but they still need to show clear and convincing evidence to the judge that Elizabeth Holmes is not a flight risk. Yes, she may have been, abiding by all the pre-trial and all the post-trial probation terms. Maybe she, she reportedly showed up for everything. So that's not showing she's a flight risk. But what the prosecution is arguing, this is the greatest time in which defendants have a motive to flee. When you're looking at facing 11 years and 3 months in prison, that's quite the incentive to take a ticket to Mexico. So we'll see. All right, could she get an ankle monitor at the hearing? Yeah, she could. Mexico does not have extradition agreements, does it? I don't know. I don't know. Somebody look that up and let us know. The other thing is, I don't think you need her passport to get, well, actually, she would need her passport to get into Mexico customs, wouldn't she? So who knows? Who knows what's really going on there? All right, so let me talk to you about clear and convincing. It's a pretty high standard, okay? So there's preponderance of evidence, which, okay, we'll talk about football. So get it just over the 50-yard line, that's preponderance, like 51%. More likely than not, that's preponderance. That's a civil standard, civil lawsuit standard. Then there is clear and convincing, which is the next step up, which is what the defense has to show that she is not a flight risk by clear and convincing evidence. So I think this ticket to Mexico is going to be problematic. But again, the defense is going to say you didn't raise it earlier. She hasn't She hasn't violated any of the conditions. She's been very abiding during this whole time since she's been convicted. But the prosecution is going to argue with, I think, great persuasion here that this is the time the defendants run, okay, when they're looking at 11 years in prison, okay? Not saying that she will, but her thinking. What's your thinking when you're possibly awaiting conviction, or you've already been convicted and you have, oh, and by the way, this ticket was not canceled until the government contacted her attorneys. Okay? So that ticket was pending. She knew she booked that ticket to Mexico while she was sitting in the courtroom, and I was there. I watched this trial. While she was sitting in that courtroom and heard that verdict, she knew that she had that ticket. If the defense is going to say that she booked it before the verdict, well, she knew when the verdict came down that she had that ticket to Mexico. One way with no return booked. Why would you do that? And several of you have pointed out, if she's going to a wedding, as the defense alleges, that's the reason she booked the ticket. Where's the return ticket? Don't you know when the wedding's going to end? Maybe, I don't know. These people live in a whole different world than I do, okay? Maybe she just doesn't want her lifestyle interrupted. And I'll tell you why I say that. Because she's not only asking the judge to stay at home while the appellate court decides whether they're going to reverse these convictions or they're going to uphold them. She's also asking, get this, she's also asking the judge to allow her to travel. So, judge, I'd like to stay at home, but you know what? I'd like to travel. She wants to be able to travel outside Northern California. And the prosecution says, and I'm reading from their motion that they filed, the prosecution says it looks like she may want to go out of state. Okay. She goes out of state, that's a whole nother issue. So not only, talk about chutzpah here. Not only is she asking the judge to allow her to stay at home while the appeal's going on, after she's defrauded, she's shown no remorse, and that's what the prosecution says too. I watched her testify for 7 days. I didn't see any remorse. I didn't see any taking any responsibility. I didn't see any awareness of the danger that she put people at. Not only the investors, I'm talking about the patients. I know she wasn't convicted on the patient counts, but she put a product out there on the market. She represented to the public. All those people that walked into Walgreens, all those doctors who sent the blood testing orders to Theranos, they relied on these results, right? And meanwhile, she's getting all these texts from Sunny saying the lab is an effing disaster zone. So again, what reality is she living in? Okay, Kid 2, I would be to believe that she was going to a wedding, though she was going to be acquitted. She was that delusional. Yeah, no kidding. But a one-way ticket, yep. Who books a one-way ticket to attend a wedding? Well, you book a one-way ticket to attend a wedding if you've got other plans. Or you don't know when the wedding's going to end, or you want to be able to travel, maybe go to different countries, different continents. Who wants to sit around and wait for sentencing? Because her sentencing wasn't scheduled until November. She was convicted in January. Okay, could she be getting, Mexico, okay, Jose, also I thought one could just walk in. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, you can just walk into Mexico. Yep. Yes, they do. Look at El Chapo. Yes, that's right. El Chapo was extradited. Good point. Thank you, Jose. Even the crying during sentencing was so forced and fake sounding. It was there too. Yep. The other thing is, when she stood up and cried during sentencing and spoke to the judge, and some people argue she took responsibility for everything that happened at sentencing. Some will say no, she didn't. But now the judge is now aware that she had a ticket to Mexico when the verdict came down. And he generously, according to the prosecution's motion, he generously gave her time to stay at home to deliver her second baby. Right? So she, instead of her when she was sentenced in November, instead of her surrender date being earlier, he allowed her to stay out until April. It may be, I don't know. Maybe it could be because he's very compassionate. Maybe the judge very compassionate. Maybe he would like her to bond with the baby outside of prison. Although, pregnant women go to jail all the time. Or maybe he was trying to save taxpayer dollars. I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to see. She doesn't seem to realize that there are inconveniences associated with inconveniences. That's an understatement. Associated with being convicted of a crime. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. She just has different rules. She clearly, this is yet another example. She does not want to obey the rules. The rule, she sets the rules. Okay. Like I've said all along, I think she's the quarterback on all of this. I'm sure she is the one making the calls on whether they file these motions. I'm sure she reviews all these motions before they're filed. Maybe she'll make a good prison attorney. I don't know. We'll see. All right, Michele, is the judge an elderly? No, not really. Her baby blues? No, I don't think so. You guys, come on. You're going to say the judge is sexist? I don't think so. I don't think so. All right. So let's get to some of the things I wanted to talk to you about in this motion. So again, thank you to all those of you who subscribe. Please do subscribe to join our lively chat so you can put your question and comment in there. Hit that like button. And if you want to super chat me, thank you. I appreciate it. I put a link in the chat box if you want to send me a super chat. And then I'll put a PayPal link in the description box below the video. Okay, so keep voting in that poll. Do you think the judge is 93? 93% of you are saying the judge is not going to grant it. He could. I mean, it's up to the judge. He has discretion to do that. Okay. All right. So let's get to the arguments that the prosecution is making here, or replying to. Okay. Excuse me. They're saying she's a flight risk and a danger to the community. And the flight risk, the Mexico ticket, the incentive to flee, this is the greatest risk of defendants fleeing when they're facing 11 years in prison. Now, the other component is also the defense has to show by clear and convincing evidence the higher standard, not as high as reasonable doubt. Okay, so we're not in the end zone yet, or close to the end zone, but they have to show that she's a danger to the community. So what the prosecution argues, most people think violence, danger, right? Danger can also be economic harm. And so they give a couple reasons why economic harm. Number one, she was able to get hundreds of millions of dollars out of investors, right? That's based on misrepresentations, based on basically lying to them about her product. Number two, I'm going to read you from it. Let's see. Number two is that she is also working on patents, so she doesn't seem to get it. This hasn't seemed to have been a deterrent to her. So maybe those patents, I don't know if she went to Mexico or was going somewhere else to talk to people about her patents. I don't know. But those are all possibilities. She just keeps moving forward. Regardless of what the obstacles are, she just keeps moving forward. She's got a vision. She's going to implement it, whether or not it works or not. I mean, she, I think, has hundreds of patents out there. I don't know whether whatever she's patenting works or not. Clearly, the Edison, according to many witnesses and the jury, it didn't work. It was not accurate, reliable technology. Okay, so let me get my notes here. She also, here's the thing about the one-way ticket. Apparently, her partner, William Evans, also left on the scheduled date. So he had a one-way ticket. She had a one-way ticket. He had a one-way ticket for that departure on January 26th, 2022. What is that? 23 days after Elizabeth Holmes was convicted. Both Holmes and Evans had one-way tickets to Mexico. Evans left on January 26th with a one-way ticket and did not return until approximately 6 weeks later, returning from a different continent. 6 weeks later, different continent. See what I was saying earlier? We don't know if she was going to Mexico. Maybe that was just the entry point, and who knows? Okay. But I mean, it's like it's really a bad written novel where a defendant, can you imagine this? Visualize this. You're sitting there waiting to find out whether or not the jury's going to convict you, and you know you've got a one-way ticket to Mexico, and you don't think the feds are going to find out? I mean, come on. They have your passport. They're checking to make sure people don't flee. What did she think? She was going to outsmart him? I don't know. Okay, hit the like button. Thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining my live. Super chat link is in the chat box. Will be below the video. And also, please do subscribe if you want to drop me a question or a comment. Okay, Machitas, no, any other questions, comments, you guys? All right, so what was also interesting is this $450,000 loan that she got to pay her SEC settlement. Well, where did that $450,000 come from? Any ideas? Anybody? Any ideas? Listen to this. This is from the prosecution's reply. Holmes secured $450,000 in so-called loans. That's their words. So-called loans from individuals in New York, Montana, District of Columbia, Illinois, and the Philippines. Who are these people that are giving Elizabeth Holmes $450,000 when she's under investigation, and there's claims filed against her by the SEC for very similar things that she went on trial for and was convicted on. But individuals from New York, Montana, DC, Illinois, and the Philippines contributed and gave Elizabeth Holmes $450,000. For what? I mean, I understand that, the prosecution is saying that money was used to pay the SEC settlement. But what did these people who were giving her this money, what were they getting in return? This is very odd. Would they flee with the child? Of course they would, Kay. Of course. Thank you, Kay. Pictor, your message isn't there. You must have said something that they didn't like. Okay, so anyway, they also said Holmes has indicated there's no indication that she's changing course in her conduct. The statements she provided to the probation officer list patents, not one, patents she either holds or intends to work on as a potential future source of income. Oh, here we go again. Finally, despite the breadth of her conduct, defendant has not acknowledged the fraudulent nature of her conduct, rendering it more likely that she will repeat it in the future. I guess these prosecutors can make a career out of just keeping an eye on Elizabeth Holmes, and the next time she rolls something out that doesn't work, there they go again, right? So, yeah, I mean, she hasn't shown any remorse, in my opinion. Number two, as I said, she just keeps moving forward, does what she wants to do, even asked the judge, Judge, I want to stay at home, and please don't make me stay at home all the time because I do want to travel. Come on. I don't, that's a little too far. And the prosecution is concerned that she's they use the words resourcefulness. She has a lot of resourcefulness. That means she's able to get those hundreds of millions of dollars of people investing in her company. She got the $450,000 from these individuals from these 4 different states and territories, right? And she is out there developing new patents. So she seems to keep moving forward and keep coming up with resources to, I don't know, some people could say fund her lifestyle or fund her dreams, right? I mean, she definitely got Sonny Balwani to come in and join her, and I think he loaned her company, wasn't it $14 or $13 million when it was going under? He loaned her that money, and then he came in as the COO and the president of Theranos, and he was also convicted on all 12 counts. She was convicted on 3 investor, 1 conspiracy, and acquitted on the patient counts. So let me go ahead and point out some other things. They said that the prosecutor said the defendant committed an elaborate fraud scheme that resulted in more than $100 million in loss. It's actually over $120 million in loss. But we still have the restitution hearing where the government has to prove up what the losses are that the investor suffered. That date, to my knowledge, hasn't been set yet. But the prosecution goes on to say the defendant had no consideration of the patients she endangered, and with no remorse in this day, in no remorse towards the investor victims either. Given the nature and the magnitude of the crime, as well as their lack of remorse and her indicated willingness to continue operating in similar fields in the future, the defendant cannot meet her burden of demonstrating by clear and convincing evidence that she does not present a danger to the community under the relevant factors of the section. I don't need to read that to you. So the prosecution is arguing that the defense is not going to make their clear and convincing evidence standard to show to the judge that she's not a flight risk and that she's not a danger. Based on these arguments, I think they're pretty persuasive. So if they don't meet that test, the judge can deny her request to stay at home pending appeal. Okay. Then the other factors are, I just wanted to go over these briefly with you, are, let's see. Hang on one second. This is a long motion. Okay, so the defense has to prove by clear and convincing evidence that she's not a flight risk or a danger to the community. So I talked about that. And that her appeal is not for the purpose of delay. Well, they didn't particularly address that in this motion. Maybe they're going to argue it at the hearing. The third factor that the defense has to meet is that she raises substantial questions of law and fact. And again, please look at my prior videos, the 10 Reasons videos and the Sunny Balwani, Elizabeth Holmes Stay Home videos. I think they're under the live analysis section because I go in depth about everything. But whether or not Elizabeth Holmes is raising substantial questions of law and fact, you remember regarding the LIS database, regarding Dr. Doss testifying as a fact witness or an expert witness, whether the judge made proper rulings on that, whether the judge made a mistake in letting in the SEC testimony that Sunny Balwani gave, whether the judge made a mistake in the ruling regarding the driveway statements that Dr. Rosendorf made, whether the judge made a mistake in leaving out the defense's opportunity to cross-examine Rosendorf about the 3 jobs that he had after he left Theranos, and some of those labs were investigated. So the defense wanted to get that in to show that, he's a knucklehead. That's the reason the technology or the results were not accurate. Had nothing to do, because that's what Elizabeth Holmes values the most. She does not want to be proven that her technology does not work. She will never, I don't think she's ever going to admit to that, okay? She designed it, it works. But Rosendorf and many other witnesses at trial testified, no, it didn't work. Even Tyler Schultz, I did a video on that. The scatter plots that he had sent to Elizabeth Holmes showing her how unreliable the results were, okay? But the defense has always claimed, and she's always claimed, it was human error. That's why the results were inaccurate. It had nothing to do with her technology. Okay, so those 10 reasons, were they substantial questions of law or fact? Well, the prosecution argues they can't meet that burden either. And even if they did, it's called harmless error. Harmless error. So there are 2 standards. There's prejudicial error and there's harmless error. If it's harmless error, then the Court of Appeals is not going to, overturn anything, reverse anything, right? Harmless meaning, okay, maybe the judge made a mistake here, but given the totality of all the evidence, all the other witnesses' testimony, the exhibits, all the other evidence, that one ruling that judge made really didn't impact the outcome. That, that I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but that would be what's called harmless error. Okay. If it's considered prejudicial error, then it's something that definitely impacted the outcome of the verdict. Okay. So say, for instance, I'll give you an example. There's the Fifth Amendment in the United States. The defendant does not have to testify. So imagine a prosecutor in closing argument saying, you didn't see the defendant get on the, or like for Balwani, you didn't see Balwani get on the stand. He didn't get on the stand and tell you he was innocent. Well, that would be a huge error. Okay. And if the judge missed it, the jury came back and convicted, the defendant appealed, that would be prejudicial error. Okay. It has to be a ruling that prejudices or has such a great impact on, even an objective standard of how the jury would assess all the evidence. So if it's something that's so important to their decision, a big piece of evidence, a key witness, something like that, very significant piece of evidence, then the Court of Appeal could overturn or reverse based on prejudicial error. So what the prosecution is saying, okay, great. Look at all those 10 reasons. And by the way, the prosecution does say 7 of those 10 reasons relate to the patient counts, of which she wasn't even convicted of. So we don't even have to address those, okay? But even if, say the judge, and again, this is the judge looking at his own rulings, right? So he's reviewing his rulings and making sure he made the right call. And even if the judge made the wrong call, the prosecution is saying, they're saying he didn't make he made the right call. But even if there was a mistake, even if it was an error, it's a harmless error. That means the conviction would be upheld. Okay, so is everybody following me on that? What continent? Jose asked, what continent did Mr. Evans? They don't say. I don't know. Would they flee with the child? Yes. Okay, Cowboys and Niners are tied 9-9 in the third quarter. Woo! Okay, keep me posted. Go Niners, my hometown. Okay. All right, so let's see. And the next factor is it likely to result, even any of these 10 reasons, are any of them likely to result in a order for a new trial or reversal? I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. Do you remember that the Elizabeth Holmes made a motion for a new trial, right? The acquittal motion that I call it. You can go ahead and look at the video I did on that. A lot of these issues, these 10 reasons, they've already brought up, the judge has already made decisions on. They're kind of, they're bringing it up again. And I understand the defense is doing it, to get another ruling because they want to use this as all part of the record that goes to the Court of Appeal that reviews it. Okay. I call them the Court of Readers because basically they read all the trial transcripts, which indicate, what everyone testified to. They look at all the motions. They look at all the decisions, the rulings, the orders made by the judge. They apply what the law says and they look for any errors, and they're looking for prejudicial error or some kind of abuse of discretion by the judge. Okay. So far, I don't see any of these 10 reasons being that helpful or, leading to an order for a new trial. Okay. So, and again, substantial question would be that it has to be a fairly debatable call that the judge made. So, say the driveway statements. You remember when Rosendorf showed up at Elizabeth Holmes' estate where she's staying with her partner, Billy Evans, and her child? Adam Rosendorf, Dr. Rosendorf showed up and he made statements saying that he said the prosecution made everyone look bad. It was kind of like his remorse. So the defense filed a motion for a new trial. One of the reasons is that it was new evidence, that here's this witness shows up and, basically what they're saying is that when Rosendorf made those statements, he was recanting his testimony. So the judge granted, which I thought was pretty amazing, the judge granted the hearing to have Rosendorf come in. Well, actually, it was a good decision because you want to clear it up. You want to clean it up for the record and see exactly what it is that Rosendorf said and whether or not he's changing his testimony, whether or not he's going to say he lied on the stand. And Rosendorf got on the stand at that hearing and said he doesn't believe that the prosecution made everybody look bad. He didn't say he lied. He wasn't recanting his testimony. So the judge ruled that there was no new evidence and was not going to grant a new trial based on those driveway statements. Okay, so, but those again is one of the 10 reasons that Elizabeth Holmes, wants her appeal. But I don't think it's a debatable call. I don't think it's debatable that if other judges had heard what Rosendorf said in that hearing or had read the order that the judge made denying that new trial, I don't think other judges would be debating it. Okay, again, this is a call that the Court of Appeal can make. They're there to find out if there's any errors that were made at the trial court, okay, in her trial. Okay, so I don't think the prosecution is saying there's not any substantial questions of law and fact in her appeal. Those 10 reasons don't amount to substantial questions. And even if they do, it's harmless error. She would have gotten convicted anyway. Okay. Let's see. The next thing is, I got the economic damages. We talked about that. Oh, yeah, they talk quite extensively about, and I'll say it, the undeniably compelling motivation to flee, for Elizabeth Holmes to flee, given the convictions and the length of sentence imposed. And that the defense cannot meet their burden of clear and convincing evidence to show that she's not a flight risk. Okay. The incentive, according to the prosecution, the incentive to flee has never been higher, and the defendant has no means to act on, and the defendant has means to act on that incentive. So that's why I titled this video that she has the means and the motive to flee. The motive being, who wants to serve 11 years in prison? The means, obviously, she's got resourcefulness, according to the prosecution. She's able to raise money in hundreds of millions. So we don't know what's going on, but I'll tell you this. She did submit, let me do Cowboys. All right. Okay, that's, this lady still has no remorse. You're right, Doug. She has no remorse. None. So maybe that's going to be her best-selling book when she's in prison. If I had remorse. Just kidding. Okay, so the part I wanted to talk to you about is the probation services gets a income statement from defendants. So Elizabeth Holmes provided what's called a cash flow statement to the probation department because they want to find out what your means are, your ability to pay restitution, your ability to pay any fines if you're required to pay fines, etc. They want to find out how stable the household is, where the income, what sources of the income are. So her request to travel, Judge, can you ease up? I'd like to travel outside of the state or within the state. I'll stay at home, but I'd like to take some trips here and there. She said that the reason she wants to travel is she wants to travel with her partner on his business as part of his employment business or his having to do with his, let me get the exact quotes here. She provided a monthly cash flow statement to the U.S. Probation Office. She indicated that the monthly expenses at that estate that they're staying at in Atherton, which is a Tony neighborhood outside of San Francisco in the peninsula, quite nice. The monthly expenses are $13,000 that they're paying per month. She said that her partner, William Evans, pays the monthly bills. He pays the monthly bills rather than her, but she also listed on that cash flow statement that his salary was what? Anybody want to take a guess? Her partner, who's paying these monthly expenses of exceeding $13,000 a month at that estate. I don't know what all the expenses are. She's asking for permission to travel outside of Northern District of California and perhaps outside the state due to her significant other's employment. But guess what she lists as his salary on that cash flow statement? Yeah, very good, Pictor. 0. Okay, so follow me. She wants the judge to allow her to travel because she wants to accompany her partner as part of his job, but he has no salary and he pays the bills. Big question mark. But apparently he was gone for 6 weeks, returning from a different continent because he used that one-way ticket to Mexico. The one that she booked was canceled because the prosecution contacted the defense attorneys and said, hey, that's an unauthorized travel, unauthorized flight. Holmes then canceled the ticket after she got caught. Okay. So Hugo says millions, Doug Kelly 1 million at least. I don't know about all that. What's your source on that, you guys? Kidco 0, K Brown, so he has no job? Well, or he has some source of income. I thought she was a stay-at-home mother with a child. She is currently, but in April, I think, and you guys tell me, 91% of you probably agree with me. I'm looking at the poll. I don't think the judge is going to grant this because they can't meet the very first factor that she's not a flight risk and she's not a danger by clear and convincing evidence when she's sitting there awaiting a verdict and either has already the one-way ticket to Mexico or has it after she's been convicted. Either way, it doesn't look good. Okay. So, and the request to be able to travel elsewhere, I don't think that's going to be granted either. I think the judge, look, the judge has been very compassionate, in my opinion. He's given quite a bit of time for both sides to flesh out whatever their arguments are, file whatever the appropriate motions are. You know, the sentencing was 10 months later. Her surrender date is 5 months after that. So, that's pretty significant amount of time that she's been given. I don't think there's any more time left. I think she's going to be surrendering on April 27th, but you never know. This case, you just never know what's going to happen with it. All right. And they said here, the defense has both the means and the motive to flee. You bet. She's able to come up with hundreds of millions. She's got the means, potentially. The motive, definitely. Right? Looking at 11 years, 3 months in jail. Judge knows everyone is watching this closely. Well, every judge, look, federal judges have lifetime appointments, okay? This judge has been on the bench for quite a while. And prior to that, he was, I think he sat on the Superior Court in Santa Clara County. He was a trial judge. And prior to that, he was a public defender. He was a public defender in Santa Clara County, okay? And Silicon Valley, right? So I'm sure he worked on many similar cases, and he's been on the federal bench, I think, close to 20 years. So he's seen quite a lot. And I think that's, I think that's why he's been so, really, he's been so patient and he's been so conscientious, and he's been, his rulings, in my opinion, have been clear. And he's allowed both sides wide latitude in filing whatever they thought was appropriate motions to make or objections. Okay, her secret little trip put the kibosh on all. Yeah, no kidding. But they're still asking. Fungi, she's still asking. Even though she knows, the prosecution knows about this one-way ticket to Mexico, she still is asking the court, the judge, to ease up on the travel restrictions. I'll stay at home, but let me travel too. Come on. I think she'll travel to Bryan, Texas. I think is where she's going to travel to. That's where the prison is. Okay, Holmes can't run because her partner's home was posted as bail. Her parents' home. Yeah. The other thing I'm curious about is, I think in her, I'm not sure if it was in her motion or was it the interview with her mother? I can't remember. But apparently Elizabeth Holmes was giving her parents money every month. And I don't know about you, but we have so many of these fraud cases going on right now. And like the SBF case, the FTX cryptocurrency hedge fund, the Alameda Research. At what point are the investors on the hook for this? I get it. These, I'm going to call them kids because I'm older. I get it. These kids start these companies and think that, they're innovative and they're the next Steve Jobs, and all these investors pile hundreds of millions into them. and they don't ask questions. I mean, at what point? And then do they profit from this? Are we? I mean, at what point? I mean, the way to stop this is to hold the investors responsible. Okay, just my opinion, and I'm not saying these investors or those investors should be responsible, but it's certainly a question we should consider, right? Because first of all, in the FTX case, there was no board of directors. How could you be investing in a company with no board of directors, for starters? I mean, anyway, all right, let's get back to Holmes. I knew she hides money. Well, we don't know that. We don't know she hides money. We don't know. Yes, but maybe she has the incentive not to do anything wrong. Although I think her parents' home was held as collateral for the $500,000 bond. I think that was right after her conviction. I think. So maybe she won't violate it because she doesn't want her parents to lose their home. Okay, the kid is a natural born scammer. Well, I'll let you guys. I have other words for that. I am sure Holmes will flee regardless of what happens to her parents' home. Yeah, that's a very good point, Fungi. Because why would you ever put your parents through this? Okay, but again, there were many years that she was taking in hundreds of millions of dollars. I assume she was giving her parents money during that time, if my memory serves me correct. The common thread is these investors don't understand the product. Oh, I don't know about that, Andisban. I don't know about that. I think they're jumping on the bandwagon because they think it's going to be a great investment. I mean, if you heard the testimony of the investors in the Holmes case, they were looking. Elizabeth Holmes of Balwani recruited certain investors, right? And those investors, some of the representatives took the stand and they talked about how they didn't want to ask questions of Elizabeth Holmes because they didn't want to miss out on the opportunity. I mean, they saw all the hype and how the next greatest product was coming out there. They want to jump on and make some money at it. Yeah, I don't, but is that a reason? Do you have no culpability if you don't understand the product? Why are you investing? I mean, they're investing in the hype. I mean, there's plenty of personalities out there that are leading brands, and you wonder whether the products really work. Okay, parents' home was a bail guarantee. Yep. She will toss them under the bus as long as she's out of prison. And maybe they won't mind losing their home if she doesn't have to go to prison. I don't know. Billy Evans will have them move in. Yeah, that's another good point. Good point. Okay, so let me see what else I wanted to talk to you about. Just double checking the motion here. It's quite extensive. Yeah, so hang on one second. Yeah, most of the rest of it is just restating what happened at the trial and what the judge's prior rulings were. So that's pretty much with the motion. So just to sum up, the prosecution is arguing the defense can't meet their burden to show by clear and convincing evidence, which is the higher standard than preponderance. So it's beyond the 50-yard line, but it's not as far as the end zone, which is reasonable doubt. So the defense, they're not going to meet the burden to show that it's clear and convincing evidence that she is not a flight risk and not a danger to the community because of the ticket to Mexico, right? Because the great incentive, which is the stronger argument, the great incentive to flee because she's looking at 11 years in prison and has the motive and the means to flee. She's demonstrated possibly with that Mexico ticket. She certainly has the means because if she's able to get money from these people from these different states and the Philippines to the tune of $450,000 to pay off an obligation that she has to settle that SEC settlement, she's using other people's money. Okay, but she has the gift or the ability to generate those kind of funds, then that would give her the means to flee. Okay. And then as to whether she has substantial questions of law and fact, those 10 reasons, that I talked about, Dr. Doss, whether he's an expert witness or a fact witness, the driveway statements, the voiding of the lab tests, the LIS database, etc. All those 10 reasons, you can look at the video I did on that because I go into more extensive. The prosecution is saying she doesn't even meet that burden either because they're not debatable rulings. And even if there is an error, it's harmless error. It doesn't rise to the prejudicial error that could require a reversal of these convictions. Okay, so it's a lengthy one, but it's mainly a restatement of what happened in the trial. Okay, so she wants to stay at home pending appeal. So the appeal could take up to 2 years. And she's going to be filing her opening brief with the Court of Appeal where they lay out what the issues are on appeal. Remember, because those 10 reasons were she may, and by the way, the prosecution said vague presentations of issues on appeal. I just shorthand and say she may make these issues on appeal, these 10 reasons. Even that's not enough, right? So it will find out when she files that opening brief, I think it's beginning of March, what her actual issues are on appeal. And I bet they're going to be very similar to everything we've been talking about, those 10 reasons, plus all the motions she made during the trial, okay? And also the newly discovered evidence motion that she made requesting the judge to grant a new trial, which he denied. So it's very similar issues. So there's going to be something new. There always is. There's probably going to be something relating to the calculation of the sentence was incorrect. The calculation of loss was incorrect, right? The valuation of Theranos at the time these investors invested, remember, because it was approximately 144 million if you just do the math on the 3 investor counts that she was convicted of. But the defense argued that she should be given credit for the reasonable value of Theranos at the time that the investors invested. Okay, so they had a valuation expert, both the prosecution and the defense, and I think the judge estimated, and again, they don't have to have it down to the penny, estimated the loss was around 120 million. But we'll find out exactly what it is or what it is they're pursuing, the government is pursuing at the restitution hearing, because at the restitution hearing, that's when the government has an opportunity to put on evidence to show what the losses were for the investors. So that could be investors testifying as to what, the PFM fund, the Health Sciences Fund in San Francisco, that 38 million that Brian Grossman testified to, the 99 million that Lisa Peterson testified to on behalf of the the DeVos family, and then David Mosley's 6 million, and I think those were the 3, right? So that would be shown at the restitution hearing, the exact amount, whether or not they're going to be pursuing what kind of losses, that amount, and whether the judge will be requiring Elizabeth Holmes to pay restitution, and what that amount will be, we'll find out. Okay, again, I don't know what the date for that is, but Elizabeth Holmes is to surrender, and it looks like it's going to be the Bryan, Texas facility. And you can go to the U.S. Bureau of Prisons and take a look at the picture, read all the stats about Bryan, Texas. It's what's called a federal prison camp. So it's not the security with the fences and all that. It's more dorm style, I guess, rehabilitative type setting. And several high profile fraudsters and other people from the past have also gone to that facility. It's a women's facility. So she's supposed to surrender April 27th. This motion will be heard on March 17th. The appeal brief, the opening brief for Elizabeth Holmes, where she'll lay out the issues, is due beginning of March. Okay. This is a federal sentence, yes. Still a prison where she can no longer call the shots. Well, I don't know about that, Pungai. I don't know about that. They're still going to have email and phones, and people are going to be able to come visit. I don't think they give hall passes, but, she's not going to be serving all 11 years. I think it's around 85% of that. Maybe she'll do some good. She'll teach some of the other prisoners about marketing skills, about how to raise money, about how to set up a business, about how to work with the media, about how to do a patent application, how to act in trial, how to testify when you're on the stand. There's a whole bunch she could teach people. Business skills. Okay, Doug, Reed will have to do mental health evaluation. Yeah, Doug. So yes, it was reported, and I also reported it to you guys, that when she gets out, she has to do mental health counseling. I think that's a common request, because when you serve that amount of time, they want to help you transition and also keep an eye on you. So it's a good idea. But what's interesting, Doug, is it's not asked for during. It's when she gets out, there's mental health. If I'm correct about that, and I think I am. It's a probation term under her what's called supervised release. So both she and Balwani, because they were convicted, they both have 3 years. When they get out of prison, they have 3 years of supervised release. And you can think of it as probation. And during those 3 years, they have probation conditions that they have to abide by. And one of those probation conditions that's being reported is that she has to submit to and also pay for mental health counseling. But my question is, how she's argued and presented that she was, in an abusive relationship allegedly, and Balwani allegedly was abusive towards her and controlling. And well, where's the counseling for that, right? If that's true, just a question I have. Okay, but a far cry from where she lives now. Yes, it is. Yes, it is a far cry. But, as the prosecution says in their motion, the time has come for Elizabeth Holmes to answer and to start serving her sentence. Okay, so I don't know, should I say this might be the last motion before April 27th? I don't know if I can say that. But I do not think, in my opinion, that the judge is going to grant this. I don't think the judge is going to grant this. I also don't think the judge is going to give her any travel permission between now and April 27th. And I am sure the prosecution and the feds are going to keep an eye on her, because this time is, the closer it gets to April 27th, the more likely it is that the defendants will flee. Okay? So, we just scored. Yay, go Niners. Okay, so let's see, any other questions? I think I covered it. Everybody. Who wants to travel so close to delivering a baby? I think she's having the baby this month. I think if she was 7 months in November, I think it was reported. So maybe January, February, she's having the baby. She will teach how to get seasoned billionaires to invest tens of millions. Yeah, no kidding. It could be very helpful if you're running a nonprofit or if you're running a company. People have taken people have fallen from great heights and come back and done wonderful things. And I don't know if she will or won't, but at this point, she doesn't seem to get it. She doesn't seem to appreciate what position she put the patients in, the investors in, her employees. Those text messages, and you can look at the videos I did on the text messages between her and Balwani. It's very clear to me she knew what was going on in the lab. And it was also, I sat through that trial. She's very, very lucky she didn't get convicted on the patient counts, because there was plenty of evidence, in my opinion, to support convictions on all counts. So, get an apartment, maybe onward destination for Mexico is a country with no, hey, good point, Kay. Very good point. With no extradition agreement with the U.S. Yeah. I wonder what was up with that ticket to Mexico. But how could you? I find it really shocking. I find it shocking that she didn't think she was going to get caught, or if she got caught, she didn't care, because I guess her attorneys would say, oh, she didn't mean to take the trip, which is what they said. It was a wedding that she booked before the conviction. Well, but she was sitting at the table when the verdict was read, knowing that she had a one-way ticket to Mexico, both she and Billy Evans. Okay. Thoughts on the release search warrant from Brian? I haven't looked at it enough to give you enough of a comment. Maybe onward destination, join late, but why did it take a year from it's not a year. They knew then, the prosecutors knew then back in January 23rd of 2022, so 21 days after the conviction, they knew about this unauthorized one-way ticket to Mexico. They brought it up with the defense counsel, and then the ticket was canceled. It wasn't until the prosecution intervened that ticket was canceled. The defense claims that it was booked before the verdict because she was going to a wedding, but there was no return date, no return ticket. But still, she sat at the table when the verdict was read, knowing she had a one-way ticket or was booking a one-way ticket to Mexico. So I thought she surrendered her passport. She did. They have her passport. And she's also had travel restricted. She's had to stay in the district, the Northern California district area, the federal court district. That's their jurisdiction. So that's why she's asking for not only, judge, let me stay at home, but judge, can you ease up on the travel restrictions? Because I want to go traveling with my partner on his business, although she tells probation that his salary is zero. So I guess he has no income from his business. I don't know. Doesn't make any sense. I don't get the math on that one. Don't need a passport to walk into Mexico. Yes, Jose. Yep, very true. Yes, it's very simple to walk across. Yes. Wash. Yeah, so we'll see. The other thing I wanted to point out was, I can't remember. Actually, let me mention a couple of your comments here that I thought were really good. Then why would she think she can go to Mexico without a passport? Yeah, well, I don't know. There might be other things involved that we don't know about. As Kay said, it's never a dull moment. Very true. Lion Screw said, I kept saying she would attempt to flee. I'm not happy that I was right, but c'est la vie. Windy Old Bird said, looking forward to seeing how Elizabeth Holmes and the others were caught and how the $450,000 in loan was to get paid back. Yeah, I don't know. The prosecution's calling it a loan, so-called loans. I guess Holmes is calling it a loan. I'd be curious to what's the collateral for those loans and who are these individuals from New York, D.C., the Philippines, and Montana? Who are these people giving Elizabeth Holmes $450,000 to settle a claim with the SEC while there's an investigation going on? And then 402, Michelle, what's going on? Oh, what's going on? And can you update us on the First Amendment lawsuit against Fauci and the 60 other government officials? Well, I was looking at, just real quick, you guys might want to look this up yourself. You can go to the Attorney General of Missouri's website, to their homepage, the Attorney General of Missouri, because the Attorney General from Missouri and Montana, and a couple doctors, one from Stanford, Harvard, etc., and some other private individuals are suing. I think I counted, was it 58 government officials across 14 government agencies for censoring their videos on YouTube or their postings in violation of the First Amendment. And so the judge, I did a video, you can take a look at it. It's the Fauci Psaki judge orders deposition. The federal judge stepped in and ordered 10 officials, government officials so far, Surgeon General, the people from the White House, Anthony Fauci, several other individuals, to submit to a deposition to figure out whether or not they coerced or colluded with social media companies like Google, like Facebook, like Twitter, to censor these doctors' postings, their YouTube, their videos, their websites, demonetizing, deplatforming, etc. And if they did, that is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. So in other words, the government can't use private companies to do what they can't do. Okay, so if they're coercing, and I have the emails. I've looked at some of these emails and they're posted. You can go look at the Attorney General of Missouri and the Attorney General of Louisiana. Frankly, they just deposed Brian's, what's his name? I think it's Brian Scully, who's from one of the government officials. And in his deposition, this is what the Louisiana Attorney General posted on his website. He said, quote, Mr. Scully's deposition is unbelievable. At least 6 CISA, I think that's Counterintelligence Security Administration, which I didn't even know existed. But anyway, at least 6 CISA government officials worked in shifts day, nights, and weekends to report to social media platforms with the expectation that they would take action to censor speech on their platforms. And the Attorney General said they're uncovering the widespread and systematic collusion between big tech and big government to censor Americans. So if you care about the Constitution, I suggest you pay attention to these lawsuits. There's also another lawsuit filed against some of the legacy media, Washington Post, I think, New York Times. You'll have to double check on this because they apparently grouped together to squeeze out some of the independent media. And there's a lawsuit being filed against them as well. So, which they're also not supposed to do. So let me get back to your comments here. And maybe I'll do a live. If you're interested, let me know. Drop it in the comments because I can certainly go through. These are very interesting. For me, I'm a law geek. I'm curious, whenever constitutional questions come up, because, when you do criminal law like I did for many years and still do occasionally when I get a good case, you got to know what the Constitution is. You got to know whether or not the search is reasonable, whether or not the search is legal, whether or not the confession was obtained legally, whether or not your defendant or the defendant wants to take the stand or not take the stand, the Fifth Amendment, the Fourth Amendment against search and seizure, all of that stuff, the First Amendment, free speech. Anyway, I won't go on. But anyway, so back to Elizabeth Holmes. Let's see. Sasha Moore said, are you freaking serious? Oh my God, I knew she'd try and dodge out of this 11-year sentence. Hugo said he saw something about her going to a wedding. Yeah, we covered that. 402, thank you for your comment. Waiting for your analysis on the recent report of Elizabeth Holmes. Any idea why it took the government so long to learn about it? No, they knew about it right away. And Pungai, they knew, and they didn't bring it up knowing it would be perfect ammo to have a report. And this is a good argument here, Pungai. It would be perfect ammo to have her report to prison during her appeal. So in other words, they waited to talk about it. Well, it still doesn't help the defense. They still have to show that she is not a flight risk by clear and convincing evidence. So this Mexico ticket is not going to be helpful. And I really find it hard to believe that a federal judge is going to allow, this federal judge will allow a defendant to stay at home pending appeal, given everything that's happened in this case and the fact that she's facing 11 years. And, back to that point I made earlier and several times now, she's sitting at counsel table knowing she has a ticket to Mexico and the jury convicts her. So whether she had the ticket before or after, doesn't matter. She has travel restrictions. She was told she doesn't have her passport. What is she doing thinking about going to, if she was going to a wedding in Mexico? So again, to me, it's another indication she doesn't abide by the rules, doesn't want to, doesn't seem to, doesn't show remorse, which is the most important thing. If you want to get any leniency like she asked for, you got to show remorse. And I also think it might change the judge's perception of her statements made at sentencing, given all of this that's happened. So we'll see. Okay, so anything else? Without a passport via the road, yep, definitely she could do it that way. 402, she has the money and could have taken a private jet. Pretty dumb to take a commercial flight. Why is this being made public now, not at the time of her convictions? Probably because it's not an issue, because they're not objecting to her. Let me put it this way, because the prosecution hasn't objected to her staying at home earlier. Like they did not object to her staying at home between the sentence and surrender date. But they're bringing it up now because Elizabeth Holmes is asking the judge, hey, I want to stay home now through the duration until the appeal is decided. which could be 2 years out, when the prosecution wants her to serve time now, to start, serving her sentence, because that's what, the Bail Act of 1984 talks about. That's what Congress intended. I'm sure that's what a lot of people, you don't want justice to be served. Okay? So an appeal is not a delaying tactic, and this is absolutely a delaying tactic. Well, not necessarily. I think if I was a defense attorney, with the Mexico ticket, we can talk about that later. But as a defense attorney, if your client wants to make a motion for release pending appeal, in other words, a stay-at-home motion, every defendant can make this motion. Everyone. She's not doing anything that's, I get the media is trying to, sell eyeballs and grab your attention. But, most of these motions are very ordinary, in my opinion, in the sense that most defendants make these motions. They appeal to test the evidence. They make a motion in new trial when they get convicted. They look for newly discovered evidence to get the judge to grant them a new trial. They ask to stay at home pending appeal. All of that. Those are common motions that a lot of defendants make. The reasons, throughout this whole case have been a little different and extraordinary for Elizabeth Holmes, definitely. Cases, wouldn't having a small baby be a factor contributing to her not being a flight risk? Not really, right? You can take a baby in tow. And many pregnant women and new moms and new dads go to prison all the time. An 11-month sentence is not the same as a 6-month sentence. The convictions are for serious crimes. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. 11 years. Remember the very first video I did on this channel? Just on my brief analysis, I said at least somewhere in the range of 8 years, right? Before finding out all this other stuff. So I knew this was serious. I know other people out there have been saying for years, she'll get a slap on the hand or... No, never. That was never going to be the outcome. So, she's, both prosecution and defense have tried this case, and the jury handed a verdict, and unless the Court of Appeals wants to step in and say there was some error, prejudicial error, and reverse these convictions, she's going to be serving her entire sentence. Okay? So, her 11 years minus 85%, 85% of the 11 years. But, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen at the Court of Appeals. We don't even know what she's appealing. And then, of course, Balwani is also appealing. And by the way, Balwani is also asking to stay at home. Please update us with the video on the government amendment. Yeah, lawsuit in the future. Yeah, I strongly urge you to go look at, I can show you. Here are some of the emails that are posted. Here's an email with the White House and Facebook talking about, certain people. You can go ahead and look. These are posted. These are publicly available. Here's another one. This is with Twitter and Google. Here's another one. These are all dated starting, it looks April 2021, May 21, March 2021. Here's another one, the White House and Facebook. Here's another one, the White House and Facebook. See, redacted stuff. So the Attorney General of Louisiana, it's the Attorney General of Missouri. He actually posted these emails. You can also go to the court documents. They're also there. And maybe I will do. Here's another email. If this is true, just looking, in my opinion, looking at these emails, I'll tell you, it's not a happy day. Not a happy day looking at these emails. It's, to me, if these emails are true, it's not good. So again, you guys do your own research. This is just my opinion. You do your own investigation and you do your own analysis. Sometimes things are not reported correctly. And I can give you a quick example of that. Was even on this case. So hang on a second. I've got so much in front of me. There was an article, a news story that came out right when this this motion for release, the stay-at-home motion was filed. And one of the news outlets, I can't find it. It was right in front of me. Here it is. Hang on. One of the news outlets, I won't mention who it is. A reputable one, I guess, maybe. Doesn't even mention the ticket to Mexico, but cites to the motion that I've been talking to you about. This motion cites to it, but doesn't even mention the one-way ticket to Mexico in their reporting. So, do your own research, apply critical analysis, think for yourself, make your own opinions, you know? Any other questions? They saw too much on TV where people, like Blake Harrington. Oh my God, taking me back. And Alexis Colby routinely gets off of serious crimes. Yeah. Well, I mean, even you can think about the Enron guy, Jeff Schilling. You know, he appealed. He was initially sentenced to 24 years. He appealed. The judge made a mistake. There's an error in sentencing. Got sent back to the trial judge for resentencing. The prosecution stepped in and offered a plea deal of I think it was 14 years. He took the 14 years. So he got 10 years off his sentence for an error and for appealing. So it does happen. We don't have to watch Dynasty for that. Okay, I still believe it's extremely naive to think that old sharks, would put their names, their trust, and especially their money behind 27 Dropout with a dream. Yeah. Well, you might want to look at HK yourself. You can do your own. You can do your own Google or your own research on him as well. This was a scam that went much further up the ladder than Holmes. Yeah, a lot of people do believe that one, Guitar. That's a good point. I don't know about that. Yeah. Yes, he still did go to, Schilling still did go to prison. Right. So did Bernie Madoff. So did the other guy who was selling, wasn't there a guy who was selling some kind of home cleaning service that got busted? I can't remember. And he came out of prison and taught Wall Street how to hack, I think, hack and discover fraud, I think, if I'm right about that. Doug Kelly, thanks. You're always interesting and enlightening. Thank you, Doug. Well, you got to get, I got to, hopefully I'm making it entertaining and not too dry. But I'm just trying to share the experience and, present a different alternative than what you're seeing. And again, they asked me to comment too, but, this format allows me to talk and present more information than attend. They don't have a whole lot of time to cover a story, so it's not necessarily their fault. But this, long form format allows me to talk to you and engage with you. Schilling still did a longer sentence than both Balwani and Holmes. Yeah. Yep. So any other questions? I think you were talking about Yes, thank you. Exactly. Thank you, 402. Barry Minko. Yes, I am talking about him. Thank you for that. Okay. Is that it? Any other? Okay. So do let me know if you want to do a live. I guess Hugo wanted to do one on the search warrant with Brian Kohlberger, the Idaho murders. Possibly. Let me know if you want to do that, or if you want to talk about these First Amendment. Oh, and by the way, the lawsuit against the legacy media, it's an antitrust lawsuit. They were trying to crowd out the independent media. That lawsuit, I think, is filed by the Children's Defense Fund. So you can go to their website. I think the whole complaint is posted there too. I'm just curious as to why the media is not covering this. Any chances you could provide analysis on the Joe Rogan Sandy? I don't know about that. I don't know about the bankruptcy. I don't know about that. I can't cover everything. I get wrapped up in all this stuff. Okay. Is that it? So do leave comments if you have suggestions. Thank you, though, for your suggestions in the chat. 402, I appreciate it. Oh, really? 402, I think I'll look into that. Thank you. Okay, so again, hit that like button. Thank you, everybody, for being so supportive of this channel. I'm hoping to get to 1,000 someday. And if you want to, contribute, and thank you to all those who have contributed. There's a PayPal link if you want to super chat me. It's in the chat box or in the description box below the video. Thanks for, being so supportive and your terrific analysis, and also for keeping me on my toes and sending me those quick updates, Because I have to tell you, when I can't remember who's the first person who sent me the notice about, did I know that Elizabeth Holmes had a one-way ticket? I just went, oh, you got to be kidding me. So thank you for that tip. Okay. Yes, thank you very much, 402. Okay, so thanks again, you guys, for joining me. In spite of the Niners game, I hope the Niners are still hanging in there. So go Niners, and happy Lunar New Year to everybody. I hope you get. Thank you, 402. Appreciate it. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, and have a nice week ahead. I need this story keeps on giving. Yeah. Well, you know what's great about this Fungi Fungi is you guys. I mean, I know you. A lot of you know a lot already because I know lawyers and law students are following me. But it's a good refresher. But I mean, look at all the different motions we've gotten to walk through. And I've had the opportunity to explain to you, and hopefully correctly, but explain to you, you've actually walked through a whole, trial, to what happens after the trial, to the sentencing, explaining the federal guidelines, sentencing guidelines, all of it. So, I love teaching. So someone who, can share my knowledge and get the great interaction with you guys and the questions, it's been fabulous for me. So thanks again. I really appreciate the support, and I'm grateful for it. Okay, so have a nice week, everyone, and thanks again for watching.